Hello guys, welcome back to the Make It Happen podcast. I'm your host, Melanie Moreno. I've got to say, I feel a little bit clickbaity with the title I chose for this week's episode, but I talk a lot about getting your shit together in a constructive sense of the phrase. We are currently in Pisces season, and part of the energy I've been feeling is reflective and pondering the future, in addition to honoring things that feel really good to me, like my practices, my meditation, my writing. I've been really into writing again. Writing has always been one of my favorite things to do, and I've taken huge breaks from it, but lately I just feel like I want to write a book. Anyway, Western society has calendars that signify January 1st as the starting point of a year, but I often feel more nuanced opportunities for growth in the changing of the seasons or the transitions between each of the signs. So Pisces season ends on March 20th, and that marks the end of the zodiac cycle. It begins again on the 21st with Aries season, and Aries has a lot of firepower. So if you're like me and have been laying low and reassessing your life situation and kind of taking things easy, then that seems to be the mood as of late. It's cool. I feel it. You feel it. That's Pisces. It's energetically a time to honor ourselves, reinforce our self-care, build up ourselves with what we love and what makes us feel true so that we can then jump into Aries season ready to tackle our 2020 goals or whatever you want to go after with this high and revived energy. But first, we need to get our shit together. Yeah, I know, this is such a common phrase nowadays, but what inspired the idea for today's episode is how I feel like I'm constantly hearing people say that they need to get their shit together. I guess we're just going to dive right in today. Also, not that I encourage it, but the word shit comes up quite a lot in today's episode, so much so that you could probably have a wild drinking game going on. If this sort of language bothers you, then all I can say is I'm not cussing pointlessly, and I have a lot of purpose behind what I'm saying in this episode, so hopefully that won't deter you from continuing to listen. But honestly, I'm pretty sure most of the people listening right now are not even going to care. They're going to be like, you're saying shit? What's the big deal? Okay. So for starters, I think there's a heavy connotation to the whole I've got to get my shit together phrase. It's as if your whole life is in shambles, nothing is going right, and you've got a major mess to clean up. Possibly this could be the case, but I find that more often than not, there is just one area of life that needs some attention or refinement, and using this sort of language distorts the severity of the issue. Mindset is everything. It's also a practice, but that is exactly what I'm going to elaborate on. So generally speaking, there are a lot of things that are bigger than us and that we can't exactly solve single-handedly. This isn't anything revolutionary. We've seen this advertised time and time again with pro-environmental movements like recycling or meatless Mondays or shopping secondhand for clothing. If the bigger goal in that case is to reduce waste or water consumption or air pollution, okay, maybe an environmental example wasn't the best choice because there are so many reasons to care about the earth. But I suppose that also means that there are countless more options for how you can do your part. I mean, is shopping at thrift stores for clothing and purses going to stop big manufacturers from ever making pieces again? No, but it does reduce excess and it helps turn a big global issue into a smaller, tangible solution that you can employ, which is what I'm trying to get at. Rather than saying, screw it, I can't tend to this larger issue, just break it down into little steps that are within your power. So how does this relate to getting your shit together? Basically, instead of creating a problem bigger than you, because all problems only exist if we think they are problems, right? Well, maybe that's debatable as to whether problems are subjective or objective. Regardless, we still decide how important we want to view things as being. If you feel like you haven't been doing your best, then reevaluate what areas feel disorderly in your life and what you actually want things to look like. Perhaps you might be thinking, that's easier said than done. I'll get into some more detailed tips as we get further into the episode, so hang tight. Hopefully this makes sense, and by this point we should all have a pretty clear understanding of what we often mean when we're throwing around the phrase. That is, we have a problem and we've been ignoring it, and now it feels bigger than us. So we know the thing to do is to break it down into smaller steps that we can accomplish ourselves. Granted, I know it's not smooth sailing just because you've set direction and create an intention for yourself. I also don't want to sound ignorant to the fact that there are usually a couple of reasons tied up in problems. It isn't just you or me being lazy and not wanting to get started. I mean, that could be part of it, but there's a lot more to it. So let's talk about some things that can prove to be obstacles when we're trying to get our shit together, or as I prefer to say, get organized. These days, there are so many options for online shopping. You can order your shoes online, your groceries, pet supplies, novelty items, adaptogenic herbs, tickets for airline flights, and so much more. The tricky part is when you've loaded up your cart and are ready to check out and you see the price tag. I start second guessing whether or not I want to buy these things. I know I'm not the only one who gets a little carried away with shopping, but more than anything, I just want to know that I'm getting the best deal. That's where Honey comes in. Honey is a web browser plugin that you can install for free to help you score the items you want with maximum savings. If you're shopping on Amazon, you can see the price history, changes that have occurred, and even drop list items, which basically means Honey will keep an eye on the items. So if the price goes down anytime soon, you'll get notified. Outside of Amazon, Honey will automatically scan for coupon codes when you're on a website checkout page. This is truly such a time saver because who can ever keep track of all the possible codes? Honey not only saves you money, but allows you to keep buying the things you love and earn credits each time you make a purchase. If you enjoy a good deal, then Honey is perfect for you. Visit the link in the show notes to join Honey and start saving today. So the first thing is boundaries. More than anything, I think we have information overload. We are processing a whole lot of information on a daily and, in some cases, minute-by-minute basis. We hear conflicting ideas from friends, family, doctors, news articles, passerbyers on the street, and just everyone. Everyone has an opinion and their own way of doing things, but you don't have to care about something just because your friend does. So it becomes challenging to gut through all the excess to figure out what you want, as in the stuff your soul actually wants, without the outside influence impacting you. Be cautious of where you are taking in information from. We know that many organizations and companies have something in it for them, so they can fearmonger you into buying their products or following their ideals. However, this isn't just companies doing this. This can happen much more subtly with people. Often we go around repeating the same information we've been told or raised with throughout our lives. Just think back to when you were a kid and how everyone would ask you what you wanted to be when you grew up. I remember adults asking me, and I'd answer lawyer, journalist, magazine editor, or whatever my career interest was at the time. Yeah, I had quite a couple. Of course, my pool of knowledge in terms of careers was also incredibly small. I don't feel like I'm significantly more aware of careers nowadays because there are just so many, but as a kid, I wasn't taught to keep boundaries. I mean, the obvious boundaries regarding safety, yes, I was taught those. There are physical boundaries that one can utilize to stay away from rude, dangerous, or otherwise harmful people or situations. However, you can't always choose what people interact with you or shield yourself from what they say. That's where emotional, or actually, I'd prefer to call them energetic boundaries. Energetic boundaries are something I've learned more about in the past year. To have this in place is to be able to have outside projections, societal conditioning, propaganda, or misinformation come your way and not take it to heart. Here's how this looks for me. Lately, what I've been trying to be cautious of is the espousal of diet or thin idealism language or ideas. Anyone can fall into this trap because conditioning is so strong and deep. Most frequently, I'll hear people make comments about not being able to eat certain things that aren't objectively even bad foods. I'm doing air quotes there because what is a bad food? But they have been told by diet culture that certain foods are off limits because they are unhealthy. I also try not to look at anyone's plate because I don't need to compare my serving sizes to them, nor do I want anyone else to compare their meals to mine. Another gnarly thing is when people make comments about what someone is wearing. I've heard both my parents do this, and now with my clear eyes, I can see that this was present when I was younger too. Unfortunately, the people saying these things aren't bad people. They are victim to conditioning. They heard certain ideas at one point in their life. The ideas were likely reinforced to the point where they became subconsciously ingrained in the person's mind. And then these people go around spreading the same ideas. There's so much more I could probably say on this, but for the sake of keeping myself on subject, boundaries are how we navigate the world because we choose how much space to allow outside influence to occupy in our psyche. Beyond physical and energetic boundaries, we also have verbal boundaries, the choice to say yes or no to things that either resonate with us or don't resonate with us. I think it's a really important practice to say yes or no to everything, to give yourself the reminder that you always have a choice. The people who don't have their shit together are typically saying yes to things that distract them from what they really need, want, or have any desire to do, and therefore need to employ usage of the word no. Another thing that could be happening is not making a decision. A shrug or a middle ground stance strips you of your decision-making power. I'm not saying you have to be a dictator when it comes to making plans with your friends, but when you feel about something, this might intuitively feel different for you, but for me, I'll get that sort of feeling or a sense of blah, like I don't care what happens. But as I've been exploring this decision-making power to set boundaries, I've realized I do care, and most often the indifference is hiding a no. It's me wishful to leave an event, but not wanting to hurt anyone's feelings, or being cognizant of my schedule or my ideal bedtime, like when I'm hanging out late at night and I'm watching the clock and saying, hey, it's getting pretty late, I think I should go home, but kind of ignoring it because I want to be cool and still be involved in all the hangout that's going on. So going along with what those around me want to do, even though my heart is telling me that this is going to set me back or I don't have the energy to do more. As I said before, these are things we really need to practice. There are a lot of temptations, and sometimes it's not a big deal to splurge once in a while. You've just got to be aware of what boundaries you have and try your best to say yes to yourself more than others. Let's move on to thing number 2, taking responsibility. So this definitely connects to the first one. To some people, saying, I've got to get my shit together, becomes quite casual talk. Maybe a phrase that they throw around on a weekly basis because it's fun to speak in hyperboles and the phrase itself sounds grand. On a side note, I'm not opposed to cuss words. Some are fun and they help to emphasize a point, but I feel like they also limit a thought that can be better explained with other words. So for that reason, saying phrases like this are not funny to me. It's a way to hide behind a problem instead of taking ownership over what needs attention. Let's get specific though. Regarding the phrase, I've got to get my shit together, I've seen it being used to feign ownership of a situation, but all the person is really doing is blowing off steam. Acknowledging the problem lessens the intensity of the problem, but from what I see, the people who say, I've got to get my shit together, don't actually know what steps to take to do that. For example, if an intention of yours is to be more eco-friendly, then what is something you can do to improve that? What actions can you take that are small within your day to align with this? If you're unemployed and you are saying that you need to get your shit together, then get specific. What actions can you take from the comfort of your own home or with half an hour of time to spare? Because all of us have time, we just have to get really specific and make effective use of it. Things don't need to feel like a mess, and saying that you have to get your shit together is self-critical and not actionable. So first things first, don't fake your concern for a situation or cause. Too many times I hear the phrase being used as a cop-out or an excuse. And 2, if it's a legitimate concern, then use language that helps you get clear on what feels out of control in your life and what you need to do to fix it, rather than just making your problem seem bigger than you. That brings into question what communication tools can better get your point across. Part of taking responsibility for what's going on in your life is verbalizing constructive statements. Your friend or coworker doesn't know what is really bothering you, so if you just say that you need to get your shit together, that's not helping them help you. Instead, how about saying to your friend, hey, I need help sorting through my closet, or can you help me get my tax documents together? Be specific about what areas need work. If you aren't sure right off the bat, then think about that. I suppose that should be step one. Think about what you actually need to solve and write it down. Sometimes things feel so big in our heads, that giant list of things that seems very daunting, but you put down on paper or virtual paper via the notepad in your phone if that's your thing, then situations don't seem so big. Once you write it down, it might only be a list of, say, 3 different tasks that you need to accomplish in the coming 2 weeks. If it's a longer list, then that's okay too. I like to sort things by immediacy and importance. And most times I find what I'm stressing about isn't quite as big of a deal as I'm making it out to be. My heart goes out to the people who have to plan months ahead because of their scope of work or organization, but worry doesn't create anything of substance, only action does. So if you're worried about an event happening 3 months from now, how about turning the focus onto the assignment you need to finish this week, or the presentation you have to prepare for next week? The mini achievements that will help you get further down the path. Number 3, recognize the fear. This point is just about not letting things turn into a mess that's bigger than you. If you're anything like me and prone to stress and anxiety, a larger part of why those feelings come up is because we shape our problems into fears. I know it might be hard to hear, but sometimes we self-sabotage. We need to get prepared for an event, our sleep habits are completely out of whack, or credit card bills just keep rising. I won't say that these things are never supposed to stress us out, but when we turn them into a giant tower over us, they seem insurmountable. We then either fear taking action, or if it's a habit or stressor that has existed for a while, fear the idea of alleviating the fear-causing situation. That sounds bogus, right? Let me reiterate that. We get attached to our fears and our traumas, and when they have been occurring for a while, it becomes harder and harder to detach from them. Take, for example, a negative work environment. If you feel like you're not that jazzed about your role and the assignments you have, or your place of employment is understaffed, causing more work to be piled onto your plate, or maybe management neglects to meet the employee's concerns, whatever case, it sucks. But it's predictable, somewhat comforting to have a certain sense of stability, even if that stability isn't really beneficial for you financially or for your health or your family, whatever the case. So I'm not for this, but some people would really rather stick out a situation because it's better to them than going out and finding something else. Someone in this sort of headspace who says that they need to get their shit together is basically saying they need to figure out how to stand up for what they want. They need to be brave and demand some changes be made. Ideally, some clear and specific ones to suggest to management, if we're keeping with the work example. That's obviously more constructive than just saying, work here sucks. You would approach your boss or management and bring a list of things that can be beneficial to the workplace, or whatever you think needs to be fixed. Alternatively, if they can imagine that things can be better, they need to know that that sort of environment also exists someplace too. It's not like this is the end and this is the only sort of work that you can do, or this is the only sort of situation you can be in, that there isn't anything better. No, if you can feel the desire for something more and something better, then that does exist. It's not just you being crazy or demanding too much. It's you knowing in your heart that things should feel better and that they can be better. In this case, a person really has to just pony up and get out of their toxic workplace. Or, apply that to whatever situation resonates with you. Toxic relationship, toxic neighborhood, or housing situation, anything. I mean, it doesn't always need to be so extreme, but whatever you're fearful of, That's the thing you're building up to be greater than you, and the thing that you can actually fully tackle. You've just been resisting it. Lastly, but still important, is the idea that we should not talk about our stuff as shit. Especially because when we are using the phrase, I've got to get my shit together, we are likely talking about our life, our health, our finances, or something equally important. Don't talk about important things as shit. As etymology would have it, shit was originally a word to describe feces, poop. It wasn't even vulgar because it was literally a word to represent defecation. Later on, the word started to get applied towards things that we equated with shit, i.e. worthless items or poor quality things and situations. Of course, shit also gets thrown around in our ever-transcending lingo in other phrases. A little Google research brought up some other common phrases with the word shit, including saying, someone has shit for brains, or that something is the shit. Just for kicks, here's a few more, courtesy of Google. Be up shit creek, you're in deep shit, you don't know shit, don't give a shit, no shit, be shitting bricks, lose one's shit, when shit hits the fan, for shits and giggles, shit on someone, and eat shit. Most of the time, this colorful language is more figurative than literal, but what you may notice is that most of them all reference back to the original definition of the word. So, what I'm trying to get at here, if you take nothing else from this episode, at the very least, just don't talk about your life, your stuff, your habits, anything important, as shit. Language is powerful, not just for those around us, but for ourselves. What we speak is a verbal affirmation of what we believe, so let's use it wisely. You're devaluing yourself and your stuff when you say you need to get your shit together. Whew. Well, part of me just feels like I filmed a 90s PSA video targeted towards youth who are using language in school, but I also know language is not limited to age. Anyone can fall into speech patterns and phrases that are catchy, so I get it. The actual language was just one facet of this episode, so I hope I've given you something to think about regarding what change actually looks like. Change isn't just making blatant statements about what you think you should fix. It's about creating a mindset, an environment that sets you up for success. If this episode brought you value today, then drop me a comment on Instagram and let me know your thoughts. Maybe nothing I covered applies to you personally, but you can think of a friend that could learn a thing or two. Send them this episode. With that, I'll catch you guys next Wednesday with another brand new episode. It's a fun one. Make sure you are subscribed so you get notified the moment it is released. And have a good rest of your week, alright? Bye, my friends.